In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, so a couple of announcements. Number one, you guys know about the Inland Empire Family PAC. That is the political action committee that we formed. The whole idea with the political action committee is, as a church and as our watch, those two are both 501c3 nonprofit organizations. We're not allowed to raise funds for candidates. So we had to do it legally, which is what we did. You have to develop what's called a political action committee. And so we developed the Inland Empire Family PAC. We've got that going. We're raising funds for that to help get strong, conservative people with a biblical worldview, a Judeo-Christian value. Those are the kind of people we're trying to get on our school boards for the reasons you know. And we have a big fundraiser coming up for that organization I want to make sure you guys knew about. So that's going to be called the Schools Out Cookout. That's going to be Saturday, July 9th, and that's going to be from 4 to 8 p.m. at Heritage Hill right here in Marietta. So if you're able to join us for that, we would love for you to be there. Also, if you know anybody that wants to help sponsor that event, we definitely need some sponsors. But you can go to iefamilypac.org and you can get tickets there for that event. And then also, if you know a company or a family that wants to help sponsor it as well, they can do that there as well. If you haven't done so, please join our email list, the rwatch.com email list. You can go right there. We're sending out the notes for Daniel every week. We also send out a link to the interviews that we're doing throughout the week. For those of you that haven't seen our watch on Instagram, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, what are all the other ones? We're on all of them. Truth Social, Parler, we're on all that stuff. And we're putting out even more content now. And you're going to see that ramp up even more. The studio is almost done being built, and we've hired a producer, and you'll see more and more content. So that'll all come out every week on the rwatch.com mail list. So if you haven't gotten on that, please do so. And also, if you like this video tonight, those of you that are watching online, please like the video and then also share this video out to your friends, your family, your neighbors. We would appreciate it. Our whole hope here on Our Watch is we're going to help take back the public square. We want the church to be the place people go to get information. We want it to be a place that's a trusted source so that when people hear something, they know, hey, I know that that's real, that's right, that's true, because I heard it at church. That's our whole idea on Wednesday nights. So we are glad for our live audience that's here. So glad that you're here with us on Wednesday nights. And everybody that's tuned in online, we're glad you're with us as well. That being said, we do want to get into the book of Daniel for just a little bit. And let's see where my notes are. I don't see my notes here. That is not good. I'll find my notes. As we find my notes, let me remind you where we're at. We're ending chapter 2, and there's been this great image, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. Daniel and his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they had to make a stance for what they believed. They wouldn't receive the king's delicacies. They wouldn't drink the king's wine. These things were offered to idols, and the foods were not kosher. And he knew that if he was to partake in these foods offered to idols, that would be an abomination. And so he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to dishonor my Lord that way. And he took a stance for what he knew what was right. And that stance ends up paying out huge dividends, we're going to see. And it really is a blessing to the community when God's people will stand for what's right. And unfortunately, a lot of people get scared. Daniel could have lost his life. His 3 friends could have lost their life. People get scared to make that stance. And when they don't take the stance, the whole community hurts. But when a good, righteous son or daughter of God takes that stance, the whole community benefits from it. And that's what we're going to see as we close out the book tonight. I'm almost there, you guys. Sorry about that. Should be it. Oh, wait, no, that's not it. One more minute. I think that's it. There we go. Now it's just got to download, I think. And I am not doing good tonight, am I? It's not opening up. Well, how about this? Why don't you go ahead and throw that up on the screen, and I'll try to read it from here. Guys, work with me for a little bit. Sorry. Okay, so this is the review that I was talking about. So he had this great dream, right? He had this image, and Daniel knew what it was. Why? Because God told him what it was, and he told him what it meant. So we saw the head of gold, the silver, the bronze, basically working down the body of this image, gold to silver to bronze to iron, and then to iron mixed with clay. And this was the rise and the fall of these great empires of man. And Daniel was the only one that could tell him what this was. And if we go to the next slide, we see why that is. It's because he's the one that knows the one true living God. And here's where I got to get real close because I'm old and I can't see. It says here at the end of chapter 2, it says that the king Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that he should be, that they should present an offering and incense to him. Now, this is the king, right, falling down in front of Daniel, falling down in front of this man who just got what he needed to get from God. Now it says that the king answered Daniel and said, truly, your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and the revealer of secrets, since you could reveal the secret. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. And so Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So we're learning some things here as we close out chapter 2. We're learning that Daniel, at the onset of this whole 70 years Babylonian captivity, that Daniel is a person who was a man of conviction. And it pays off as you see that the king falls down in front of him and is offering incense in front of him. Now, some people say, well, he should not have received worship like that. That wasn't good for him to receive worship. He wasn't receiving worship in this moment. This was just a customary thing that somebody, if you did something great for somebody, they would do that. They would fall down in front of you, and it was just a way of paying honor to them, not necessarily worship. And I think I am going to find my notes here. There we go. I actually have them in front of me now. After all of that. So he saw Daniel as this worthy person, this priest, this ambassador to his God. And Nebuchadnezzar, this wicked man that we read about in Habakkuk, we read about in Jeremiah, we read about here in Daniel. This is a man who God says will travel across the lands and be cruel to people. I mean, this is a man who killed the king of Israel, killed his son in front of him, and then plucked his eyeballs out. So that way the last thing he saw was his son die. And then kept the king alive so he could have that burned into his memory. That's how wicked this man is. And this man who's so wicked is now saying that the God of Daniel is this great God. So this wicked king is starting to understand who God is and seeing a man of conviction who's going to stand for his God. I can't tell you how important that is for us today. We are in a certain month. We all know this month. If you don't go to 412 Church in Temecula Valley, I know some of you here on Wednesday nights don't, and I know many of the online audience, you don't go. I just talked about this month. We're in the Pride Month. And I feel an obligation as a pastor to talk about it, that we would be people who stand for what is right. And when people don't, you end up in big trouble. And it's not to say that we have to go out and like make some big scene against it, but to stand for what is true and what is right. And when we do that, we're going to be accused of all manner of wickedness. They're gonna say that you're a racist, homophobic, xenophobic, transphobic, bigot, misogynist. I'm trying to think of all the words they call me. That's what they do, and yet they have no true reason for doing it because our actions don't show that we hate any of them. But they're going to say that regardless, and we have to be willing to stand up for what is right. And when we don't, the culture is in big trouble. Proverbs 11:11 says this, that upright citizens are good for a city and make it prosper, but the talk of the wicked tears it apart. It is the talk of the wicked that's tearing apart our culture right now. We need, as this says, we need upright citizens. We need people like Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego who are going to be upright citizens, that are going to say, I am going to do what is right, even if it may cost me my life. I'm going to do it. And thankfully, it didn't cost Daniel his life, but it could have, and he knew that. And that's not going to be the only time in the life of Daniel as we go through this book. You'll see there's going to be other times where his life and even his friends' lives are threatened for going against the political people of their time. And there is a whole political wickedness that happens throughout Babylon. We're going to see what happens there, and we're going to see how that parallels to what we're dealing with today. And we're going to see that just like they took a stance, there are people, there are good men and women today that are going to be taking stances. They have been, and we're seeing that is really good for our culture when men and women will do that. He had a reputation that was good and strong, not just within his own friendships, but even within the government there. He had a good reputation. And it was important for him to have that good reputation. And that reputation, not only did it benefit him, but it ended up benefiting his friends. And now his friends got elevated to other positions. So there's a lot that can happen when good men and women of God take these kind of stances. And I'm hoping as we talk about the election results, we're going to see some godly men and women get put into office this November, and it's going to be a really good thing for our culture. So I can't wait to see that happen. We're going to talk about that right now as we introduce out our guest this evening. Our guest this evening is a nationally known Republican strategist and operative with experience in California, Florida, Oregon, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Virginia. So this guy has been all around the United States doing this kind of stuff. Not only that, but he's also the political consultant that the Inland Empire Family PAC hired, so that way we could make sure that our candidates know what they're doing. So please help me welcome out tonight Matthew Dobler. How's it going, Matthew?
Good, how are you?
Good. Did you see me butcher my whole opening there?
No, I thought it was great. I love the book of Daniel.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my favorites. All right, we got a lot to go through, and this is going to be fun. But before we go through it, I've already said a little bit about you, but tell us more about you. I want this audience to get to know you because they're going to be seeing a lot more of you as time goes by.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me tonight. And like Pastor Tim said, I'm a political consultant, born and raised here in the Inland Empire. I have a fond likeness for our community. I think it's a great community. I love the people out here. But like Pastor Tim said, I've done work in several states, ran several campaigns around the country. My passion seems to be California and local races because I think that's where it really matters. School board, city council, county supervisor races, that's where the differences are made. I was the chief of staff up in the legislature for several years to members in Southern California and San Diego. And after working in Michigan for about 4 years, in 2016, I ran the Michigan Republican Party. First time that Michigan had gone red for a presidential candidate since 1988, and then worked for the lieutenant governor in Michigan after that, but really felt like God had called me back to our community after the 2018 election. So here I am.
Talk to us about that. I think that's really cool, and I don't want you to just breeze past that because I think it's important for people to understand the perspective you're coming from, because I, like so many other people, I wanted to flee California. I wanted to get out of here. This was years ago, and then God just didn't allow me to go, and I know now why He didn't allow me to go, because there's a great battle that's taking place right here. And when I say battle, I'm talking about the spiritual war that we are in. It's a spiritual battle. This isn't going to be fought with carnal weapons.
Yeah.
You know, this is spiritual. We need to be praying and be very, very clear on what is at stake. And so God never let me leave. He let you leave, but He brought you back.
Absolutely.
And it's, what is it that you are now starting to see now that you're back? it's as though God has you here.
God
right?
God had a plan, and I remember when I left for college, I went to Cal State San Marcos down in San Diego, and I could not wait to leave. I could not wait to get the heck out of here. And then as the election ended in 2018, I was praying about my next steps and had a lot of offers in Michigan. I was thinking about staying in Michigan, and but I had this burning sensation on my heart to come home, and I didn't know what that meant. I thought it meant Sacramento, which is where I lived. I own a home, and I thought, oh, maybe God's calling me back to Sacramento. I have a lot of friends up there. That sounds great. And it became more and more clear that he meant the Inland Empire, Riverside County, specifically Lake Elsinore. And I said, God, what in the world? What are you wanting me to do in Lake Elsinore? What do you want me to do in Riverside County in Southern California? Everybody's leaving. The politics are crazy, and it's become really clear. I'm involved in a lot of great campaigns, organizations, PACs that are really fighting for righteousness. And so God had a plan that I was not privy to, that I did not see, but he got to reveal it to me kind of step by step as things became more and more clear. And so I'm really thankful that I took that leap of faith and followed him rather than doing what I wanted to do. I probably would have ended up back in Sacramento if I had done what I wanted to do. It's more fun. I have more friends and things like that. But I've gotten involved in helping Christian candidates, Christian causes, a political action committee that is dedicated to electing Christian candidates. And so my encouragement is stay and fight. I don't like using the word fight. I like using stand up for righteousness because that's really what we're doing. And stay involved, stay engaged, because if the good people leave, who does that leave to run our state? Who does that leave to be voting in the November election? So stay and get involved.
Yeah. So tonight what we're gonna do is just run through the election. We're gonna talk about what happened and the individual things, where it goes from here. Because a lot of people, they read this, and even I have to admit myself, there's some things I was asking, like, I don't understand this part, so there's things I'm learning as we're going as well, and it's like, a lot of people, they don't even know what this election meant. They don't even know where we're going. They don't know what's happening in November. So we want you to walk away tonight going, I understand what just took place, and I know what's coming up. And it's important that and what we're going to see from this is how important it is that we vote. I don't know when you want to bring this up, but I gave that to you. They're ready to put that up whenever you want.
We can talk about that now.
Okay. So we can put that slide up on the election results. Or the election turnout, the voter turnout. There it is.
So I thought it was really important to talk a little bit about turnout and what we're seeing. If you're on Twitter, it's really interesting to see all these pundits and political experts talk about, it was a bad night for Republicans, it was a great night for Republicans. But really what you see is that we had very low voter turnout. So according to this data, as of 3 o'clock today, we had about 14.7%, or exactly 14.7% turnout in Riverside County, about 16% turnout statewide. So 16% of registered voters turned out to vote. And now they're still processing ballots, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But in 2018, the June 5th gubernatorial primary, so 4 years ago, the exact same primary that we're facing, no presidential candidate on the ballot, we saw a 37.5% turnout. And now we'll see more votes come in over the next couple of days, the next week or so, but it's not going to get to 37.5%. It might get to 18, 19%, but it's going to go up marginally. And what we're seeing, and I was talking to Pastor Tim about this earlier, is in the post-Trump era, we're seeing Republicans hold on to their ballots more and more, so voting on Election Day, closer to Election Day. I do that as a political consultant because I love to see all the mail that I'm going to get or the text messages I'm going to get. But historically, traditionally, Republicans are the ones, they're educated on the matter, on the issue, and so they vote early and they vote quickly, right? They get their ballot, they know who they're voting for because they've done their research, and they send in their ballot. And then at 8 o'clock on election night, when we get the first initial results, we see Republicans leading in a lot of areas because they've been the ones to turn in their vote. And then that vote starts to erode as the Democratic ballots are counted, the provisional ballots are counted after 8 p.m. in the subsequent days. Well, in the post-Trump era, where more and more people are concerned about what happens to their ballot, so they want to hold on to it closer to Election Day. We're seeing Democrats have leads on election night at 8 p.m., and then that closes because of Republicans that are sending in their ballots later and later. So in the next couple of days, you'll see more and more Republican ballots be counted. I was joking around with a friend of mine who's another political consultant, and I said, this post-Trump hold on to your ballot as a Republican is really not good for my blood pressure. But it is you want to see your ballot be counted, and so you want to turn it in. I still encourage people to make an educated decision and get that ballot in as early as possible, because somebody that analyzes elections in the days leading up to an election day, I'm looking at how many Republicans are turning in their ballot, and what we saw this year is Democrats outpaced Republicans pretty considerably throughout the election over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote anymore. Elections are filled with fraud, and I don't trust it, and we lost in 2020, so who cares? I'm not going to vote. And that's such a bad attitude to have. There's a couple of things with that. Number one is, we as Christians have an ability to take a piece of paper and to say, this is what I want, and you put it down on the paper, and you get to do that as an exercise unto the Lord, and saying, Lord, this is my will, and I'm hoping that I'm lined up with you. And not only that, then I get to hand it to the government and say, this is what I want. Now, from that point forward, what they do with it, that's what they do it. They're going to stand before God someday. Not only that, but what we found in Daniel chapter 2 is that nobody's in authority unless God puts them there anyways. Yeah. So we have this opportunity to do that. But I can tell you this, there is zero doubt that there was fraud. Zero doubt. But what we're finding right now is there is starting to be some justice.
Yeah.
It's really starting to happen. As you look at, for one thing for sure is the election fraud that has been taking place. We know that there was a mayor in Arizona that was arrested. She was guilty. Now, just recently we had a former Democratic congressman has now pled guilty to fraud.
Yeah.
And, so these people are starting to get caught. They're starting to get found out. Bob Tyler, who's he's an attorney, he's a friend of mine from Advocates for Faith and Freedom. When this whole thing first started, he had a lawsuit going, and they had over 700 pieces of evidence. 700 pieces. And people are like, oh, there's no evidence. There's tons of evidence. How many of you saw 2,000 Mules yet? Just a few of you? Okay, you guys should see that movie. But it's just going to reinforce what you probably already believe. But one of the beautiful things is right now, I know we have great voter confidence. We should have great voter confidence, especially living in Riverside County. We should have great voter confidence. Absolutely. The district attorney, who we'll talk about how he did very well. That district attorney has said to the registrar of voters that he will prosecute. He will prosecute. We have a sheriff who said, I want to do away with the Dominion voting machines. I mean, we've got a good county. We got a lot of people. How many of you, by chance, anybody in here poll watchers? Anybody get involved in that? Nobody in here? We do have some people that come here on Wednesday nights. They're just not here. Maybe they're watching the county right now. Yeah. Maybe. But there's a lot of people who've stepped up to make sure, and I do believe, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we should have high voter confidence in Riverside County.
I think you're absolutely right, and I agree 100%. We have a lot of reasons to be confident in our voting process here in Riverside County, and the chief among them are our district attorney and our sheriff, who've said they're going to prosecute any injustices, any fraud that takes place. We have a sheriff that goes to the Board of Supervisors meeting and says, hey, I'm watching. You need to be careful. You need to keep an eye on this. And so he's put people on alert too. And so I think there's a number of reasons to be very confident and encouraging your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues to get out and vote. You're seeing from these numbers that people stayed home. People kept their ballot home, and maybe it's election fatigue because we just went through a special election last year and there was no break. Maybe it is concern about the validity of the election and integrity process, but that doesn't change the importance of encouraging your like-minded friends, family, and colleagues to get out and cast their ballots. Help educate them on the issues like judges, which was something that judge candidates are running countywide but don't have a lot of money, and so it really takes people with a pulpit, no pun intended, but to get out there and talk about those candidates. And so I want to challenge you to make sure that you're talking to your networks about the election and about those candidates, because it is going to be an interesting fall election. We talk a lot about a red wave, but it doesn't happen without the people in this room. It doesn't happen without Republicans getting out and voting.
Right. All right, so let's go through some of these races. We have the race for governor. And how many of you voted for Gavin Newsom? Anybody? Not one. Oh, one in the back. Hey, security, you guys want to remove that guy? So Gavin Newsom right now, so here's where, you want to explain where we're at right now, according to the state's site here.
Sure. Like I said, we have about 16% turnout. These election results are as of today. However, we got initial numbers at 8 p.m. last night, and we've had about 4 updates since then in different counties. It depends on the county and how fast they're updating. So these are preliminary numbers. A lot of trends start to develop over time, but a lot of these, depending on the vote margin, aren't likely to change. We'll talk about them case by case, but we can get a clear indication of who's probably proceeding on to the general election. California has a top 2 vote getter model, which means it isn't the top Republican and the top Democrat that proceeds to the November election. It is the top 2 vote getters, so the 2 people that get the most votes, regardless of party, move on to the November election.
So in the case of the governor, obviously it's Newsom.
Newsom was the top vote getter. He was he's the most prominent Democrat on the ballot. Got just shy of 2 million votes statewide. And then Brian Dawley was the Republican that is leading. He has about 572,000 votes, and he is the top vote getter so far. Doesn't look like that's likely to change. But he was the Republican that was endorsed by the California Republican Party and likely to be the Republican in November.
Yeah. One of the ones I was watching real close was Anthony Trimino, and watching where he's at right now, he's at 3.2% of the vote. And it's sad to me because I really believe that he was the best candidate for that role. That's my personal belief. I know his heart for the Lord, and I know his love for his family, and he's just this good, solid person. Plus, his business sense is through the roof. Of course, he owns the largest privately held, fastest growing privately held company in America. Right. That's saying a lot, and he has a lot to lose, but I don't think we've seen the end of Anthony Trimino.
Can you imagine Newsom having to run against a business owner?
Right.
The way he runs California is not a way a business owner would run his or her business. So that would have been a formidable campaign.
Right. Let's talk about the lieutenant governor. So when it came to that, there was Angela Underwood Jacobs. Mm-hmm. Anybody vote for Angela? I did. All right.
I just wanted to mention I was in Sacramento about a week and a half ago talking some chamber events, and the lieutenant governor was there. Our current lieutenant governor was there, and so there's a room full of business owners. And the governor has COVID, so he was in isolation when I was up there, so he did not address this crowd. So she stepped in, and
that guy gets COVID more than anybody I know.
I thought the
good
same
thing
thing.
He got the shots.
Good thing he's vaccinated because he. Anyways, I'm listening to her talk, and she is singing the praises of the Newsom administration, and it was $600 checks to folks. It was helping put money back in the hands because of high gas prices. It was the lockdown being a monumental step in protecting California. And I just thought, how out of touch can you be? Especially with that crowd. That crowd is small business owners that was in that audience. But I think that was just a light into the current administration. Not that I have to preach to this choir.
So we've got, obviously, a Democrat took the top spot there. No surprise. But the one who seems to be able to give that person a run for their money is Angela Underwood Jacobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a woman on woman v. woman race is going to be an interesting campaign to watch because of that. And I think that they're going to do some debates. They're both pretty educated women on policy issues. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
So if you voted for her, yay for us.
Yes.
Because we're going to see her move on, and she's a solid candidate.
Yep.
All right. Secretary of State.
Yeah, absolutely. Shirley Weber is our current Secretary of State, and I don't know that there's a more incompetent person running the Secretary of State's office, unfortunately. And not only that, she was one of the more liberal. She's from southern San Diego County. She is one of the most liberal members of the legislature when she was there.
Mm-hmm. She's the one that brought AB 329. AB 329 was the bill that brought us all this sexual perversion in the schools. So she was the author of that. And she's our Secretary of State.
And now her daughter is in the legislature taking her seat. So she gave up her seat when she was appointed to the Secretary of State's office, and now her daughter has fulfilled her seat there.
So it's her, and now it's going to be her against Rob Bernowski.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a really competitive race. All three of them are kind of party players, if you will. They're people that have been involved in the Republican Party. Rachel Hamm was kind of the favorite. A lot of people had lined up behind Rachel. I believe you had endorsed.
I didn't endorse. So this is the only one that I didn't give a recommendation on. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but I didn't have a recommendation. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one is when I give a recommendation, I want to be able to rightly tell you that I know this person. Like I know that I've interviewed them. I know people that know them that can vouch. Like I want to be taken seriously when I put out these voter guides, and so I did not know these people. And as I looked at the qualification, these people saying what their qualifications are, I didn't feel like anybody really truly was qualified. Think about California is the fifth, probably sixth now, but they say fifth largest economy in the world. Just the state of California alone. It is massive. And it's a lot of responsibility to be the Secretary of State for such a large organization, if you will. So, I looked at Rachel Hamm. Rachel, she lined up the best with me as far as what I believe and what I want, but I just didn't think she had the qualifications. I mean, she's a life coach and an internet influencer. Yeah. And that's not to belittle her. It's just I don't think we need a life coach helping to run the fifth largest economy in the world. I think we need somebody more qualified. But I did vote for her because she lined up the best with my beliefs.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah,
that being said, she didn't win.
I think we saw that in the Secretary of State's race. There were three of the candidates are like I said, are kind of party activists and involved in the party, and Rob came out on top. Secretary of State's office isn't a one that generates a lot of buzz or financial contributions, and so it's really kind of the one with the biggest grassroots network, and that was Rob Bernowski.
Controller, statewide results here. We look at Lan Hee Chen. Now, how many of you voted for Lan Hee Chen? So did I. All right. Well, Lan Hee Chen is doing incredible.
Absolutely.
37% of the vote. The one behind that person is a Democrat, Malia Cohen, at 21%. And so it looks like that'll be the runoff there in November, right?
Yeah, I think it speaks highly of Lan Hee Chen because of the number of votes. But that race is really interesting. That race involved a state assemblyman, a state senator from Northern California, the Bay Area, Steve Glazer, who is proclaimed as a moderate. He was a moderate Democrat. And they kind of lined up behind him. A lot of people wanted to support him because they wanted a moderate in there. But he's come in third. He's not doing well at all. And so that just really speaks to the fact that we live in a two-party system. You're either a Republican, you're either a Democrat or a Republican, and there's a lot of talk that someday that the MPPs are going to outnumber Republicans in the state of California, and I just don't believe it, because people are picking a side. People want to pick a Democrat. People want to pick a Republican. And so that's why I think this race was particularly interesting, because that moderate did not do very well.
Explain a little bit further what you just said. There's a two-party system. You're either Republican or you're Democrat, because some people might be going, well, you could be independent, you can be, there's other parties.
Sure.
What do you mean by that?
There are two major parties in California and in the United States. There's Democrats and Republicans. There are other parties, whether you're the Green Party, the Peace and Freedom Party. The American Independent Party is actually a party. A lot of people go, well, I'm independent. I'm gonna sign up to be an independent. That's actually a political party. If you are an independent, go look at their platform. You might be interested to know what they believe and stand for. In California, if you're nothing, if you truly don't want to associate with a party, you're what's called a nonpartisan, no political preference. So NPP voter used to be called a declined estate voter. They've changed the terminology. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So we're in a two-party system, and people tend to gravitate toward a Democrat or a Republican. The kind of the let me vote for the independent or the moderate is really non-existent in California.
All right, so the treasurer, how many of you voted for Jack Guerrero? I did.
Yeah, I do.
All right. Well, that's good, because Jack Guerrero is doing well. Going to end up going up against Fiona Ma, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be a tough race. Fiona Ma's been our treasurer, but Jack is supremely qualified to be the treasurer, and so I think that's going to be one to watch, just because of his credentials. He can really challenge Fiona Ma on the issues, on our budget, on what we're doing with the money. So he's a bright guy, and that'll be one to watch.
So, Attorney General, I had a lot of people coming to me and on my pick on this one. I picked Nathan Hochman, and some people were coming going, why didn't you go for Eric Early? And they were bringing things to me and trying to show me why what I said was wrong, and which is fine. I mean, people can have a difference of opinion, but we look at these two, and Nathan Hochman he's a Jewish man, very involved with pro-Israel policy, which always means a lot to me. And you look at Eric Early, and he came out strong as well, but the way the results ended up with, Nathan Hochman did better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Nathan is the one that is going to advance on into November against Rob Bonta.
Nathan Hochman ran a good campaign. Eric Early's run before, but Nathan was endorsed by the Republican Party, so he had the backing of the party. And there's a lot of debate among political consultants and activists. Does that really mean anything in California? But in this race, I think it did was something at play, was the endorsement. The other thing to mention is Anne Marie Schubert. She's the no party preference voter, the NPP voter. Or candidate. She was the Republican district attorney for the county of Sacramento. Really good district attorney, but they thought they'd take a chance, and another kind of moderate, they thought they'd take the Republican and put them and change her party registration to be a moderate, and she only got 7.5% of the vote. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit on that race.
All right, insurance commissioner. My pick was Robert Howell.
Yeah,
Robert Howell.
How
many else? Robert Howell. All right. Yeah. Good job. Robert Howell's doing good. So Robert Howell is got right now 17.8%. Looks like going to go up against Ricardo Lara. In November.
Yeah, there's not much to say about that. The insurance commissioner, we saw Steve Poizner a number of years ago. He was our insurance commissioner. He was our last Republican statewide elected official, and then he ran again as an independent. And there was a lot of talk. Had he spent just a little more money, he probably would have had that seat. So we'll be interested to see what happens. Ricardo Lara has a long history in the legislature, so we'll be interested to watch what happens there.
All right, Superintendent of Public Instruction. This is a funny one. And the reason I say this is a funny one is I put out that Lance Christensen was the one that I wanted to support in this. And I had somebody send me an email. I don't know who it was that sent me an email or a private message saying, did you see all this stuff about Lance Christensen? I can't believe, I can't believe you recommended him. And as you start going down it says that he's pro-gay marriage, he's pro-abortion, he's pro-masks in school. And I mean, it just, the list, if you go down the list, it'd be everything I wouldn't want. And it turns out it's not true.
It's a fake website.
It's a fake website trying to get this guy thrown off.
Yeah, I actually sent him that. I think Pastor Tim, I think you sent that to me, and I sent that to Lance, and I said, "What is this?" And he goes, "We're aware of it. We're trying to get it taken down, but we don't know who created it. We don't know. I mean, you can put a website up that says anything, and it was unfairly attacking him. I don't know. I asked him how many people had reached out to me. He said we got a handful, but it wasn't a lot. So I don't know how widespread that was, but unfortunately, in today's age, you can make a website, put anything on it, defame anybody you so choose, and that's what they did.
Or send out a text like they did for Mike Hestron.
Absolutely.
How many of you got that text about Mike Hestron? Wasn't that terrible? Oh my gosh! Murder rates are up 70% under Mike Hestron. They're actually down 28%. So totally lying about these people. Now, here's the thing. I did pick Lance Christensen. Lance Christensen, I think it's too close at this point. Because it's so tight.
That is a close race. I don't know what happens. People talk about trends developing. So he has about 4 or 5% to climb if he wants to overtake. The top vote getter, the top Republican vote getter, and that's only about 12,000 votes. So statewide, it is definitely doable, depending on where the votes come from. He's from Northern California. Spent a lot of time up there. He's also pretty well connected in Orange County, so campaigned a lot in Orange County. So it really just depends on where some of those votes come to see if Lance can move into that top vote getter position.
But then again, he's going to be running in November then. So if he does get it, it's not over then. He still has to go up against Tony Thurmond. And somebody needs to really whoop up on Tony Thurmond because he is bad news for public instruction.
I actually thought that you should run against Tony Thurmond.
Yeah, he is bad news for sure. So be praying for that one because it's really, really close. I don't think we can call that one at all.
No, I think that one's still too early to call.
U.S. Senate, statewide results here. So there's two U.S. Senate spots that were open. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I had said to vote for Mark Moiser, and some people were like, well, there was 2 spots. Well, vote for him twice. And I did, and I think that was good. So he's actually doing okay. We don't know how it will totally end up.
He's a strong candidate. Have you had him on your show before?
I haven't had him on the show, but I know him. I mean, he's a pastor's kid.
Yep.
He's an attorney that works with Harmeet Dillon. That's the law firm he's with. So he's fighting cases for religious liberty. He, like I said, a pastor's kid, loves the Lord, loves America. Yeah. He's a solid candidate. I would vote for him.
Absolutely.
10 times out of 10. I mean, he's solid.
And he's working hard. If you've ever seen him speak, I mean, he'll speak to any group that invites him. And it really is kind of what we talked about earlier. He's encouraging the base to get out and vote. He's encouraging you to go tell 9 of your conservative friends to get out and vote. So he's somebody that we definitely need running toward the top of the ticket and helping lead that because he has a lot of energy. And I think he'll help us increase Republican turnout.
So on the full term, there was a full term and a partial term that were up. On the full term, he's doing quite well. I mean, he's got a commanding lead compared to everyone else except for the Democrat that's currently in there. So Alex Padilla, which we need to get out of there. Alex is terrible for this state. I send letters to Alex all the time, and he responds to me with his canned letters. And basically his canned letters just telling me that he doesn't care what I think. That's what it's essentially saying is, I know you said what you said, but really I like what's happening.
Yeah.
So we need to get rid of him. Mark Moiser's doing quite well on that. So we're going to see him advance.
Absolutely. It was a partial term because running to fill Kamala Harris's term when she left, and then a full term for a further 6 years. So that's why he was on the ballot twice.
All right, so the second one, he's not going to get it. That one's done.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the U.S. Senate partial unexpired term, he did not win. So now it's the question of will he win in November, because it looks like he's the one that's going to be running in that. So that'll be good. We'll be praying for him, a fellow Christian brother. All right, State Assembly District 71. This one is the one that's real close to us here in our valley. This was a race between Matt Ron and Kate Sanchez. Matt Ron is the current mayor in Temecula. Kate Sanchez is from Orange County. You want to talk about that race? You're very connected to that race.
Full disclosure, I had a client in that race. I helped Kate Sanchez. The reason we kind of put it under statewide results, we'll talk about Riverside County results here in a minute, but Kate Sanchez versus Matt Ron, 80-71, spans Riverside County and Orange County, about 60% Riverside County, about 40% in Orange County. And that was a really interesting race. Matt Ron, the mayor of Temecula, against Kate Sanchez, who was virtually unknown and was outspent almost 6-1. About $130,000 to just under $20,000. And Kate's done a really good job of keeping that race close. She's about 1,600 votes under Matt Ron right now, about 4.5 points, which is really interesting because this mirrors identically to Melissa Melendez versus her opponent that she ended up beating in 2012. She came in second in the primary to Phil Pauley from Temecula, great guy. But she came in second, about 5,000 vote difference, and then went on in November to beat him and became our assemblywoman, became our senator. And so it's a very interesting race, both the last name and kind of the voting dynamic that's taken place the last day. So this is a race to watch into the fall, but over the next couple weeks, I think that vote margin will continue to decrease between them.
What do you think is going to happen in November with that?
I think that Kate ran a really strong campaign, and so I think that ultimately she'll be victorious in November if she continues to do what she's continuing to do, or continues to do what she was doing, and she really got her name out there. She really built relationships in the community, and I think she needs to continue to do that, and she'll be just fine in November.
All right, let's take a look at Board of Equalization District 4. Board of Equalization, District 4.
Yep.
Go ahead.
That's an interesting one because it does include Riverside County, it includes Orange County. Traditionally, it's been a Republican seat. Michelle Steele, Congresswoman over in Orange County, who's been in a competitive race. That's an interesting race, and it looks right now like we're going to have two Democrats at the top of this. So that nobody knows what the Board of Equalization does, or like the taxpayer watchdog for our state. There's 5 Board of Equalization seats in California, and so that one's just interesting because Michelle Steele would always say, I'm the highest Republican elected official when I was a Board of Equalization member, and so it's a position to care about in the future. It looks like we'll have 2 Democrats here, but in the future, make sure that we get one elected that's a Republican.
Just not going to happen this go around.
Right.
Let's get into the more local stuff now. We'll get away from the statewide. All right.
I'll say that you heard me say that voter turnout is about 16% statewide. Riverside County is trailing California statewide by just a hair. We're at about 15.75% turnout, so we're just right under there, which is really good in terms of we're not lagging what the statewide turnout is, and I think that's because we do have a lot of engaged voters in Riverside County.
Let's talk about 25th District, U.S. Representative. That one is, right now, there's Raul Ruiz, he's the Democrat. I hate to say it, but it's likely he's going to be the one that gets that seat. I hate to say it because he's not good for our state, but it's likely. What do you think?
That's a tough seat. There was only one Democrat on the ballot, Raul Ruiz. He got 60% of the vote, but if you add up all the Republican vote, it's about 35% of the vote. So he got 60 in the primary. All the Republicans totaled, and I think there were 6 of them, maybe 7 of them, and they got about 35% of the vote. So that's used to be a Republican seat. It has been redistricted and gotten a little bit better for Democrats. But when you're looking at a 60% vote get from the Democrat and about 35 from all the Republicans, that's going to be a hard seat in the fall.
Yeah, and that's like out San Jacinto area north of that, right?
Yep. Yep, and then out to the desert.
Right. 35th district. By the way, most of you didn't get to vote on that 25th district because most of you live in this general area. So I just want to make sure you guys know what the results are. 35th district.
Norma Torres, she's a career politician, and she's been there a long time. So it looks like that she's going to continue to be there. We had Mark Cargile. He was the top vote getter, but compared to her 50% of the vote, he got about 19. So that's a pretty safe Democrat seat. But we'll see Mark in the general there.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of safe Democrat seats in California. 39th district is another one of them, where you see Mark Takano got 60%, roughly 60% of the vote.
That's another one where Mark Takano has got to go. I mean, he's one of the most liberal members of Congress, but he got 60% of the vote, and if you add up the other 6 Republicans, it added up to about 37% of the vote. So that's a tough seat. That is more kind of out our way, Riverside area, a little bit of Corona, I believe, but it's a tough seat to win, but Mark's got to go.
40th district.
That only takes in a portion of Riverside County that is mostly an Orange County seat. Young Kim is she was an assembly member, and she won in 2020. And I'm excited to support her and help her because I think she's a great candidate. We need more representatives like Young. So as you can see on here, I mean, there's only hundreds of votes, not thousands of votes in that district, but I think she's going to do fine. She had a Republican primary opponent in Gray Grass, but she was able to defeat him, and now she's on to the general where I think she'll be okay.
All right, 41st district, that's ours. So 41st district, Ken Calvert.
That's an interesting seat. Ken Calvert's been a 30-year congressional member. He's a Republican. We were talking about this earlier. He is a Republican, and he votes the right way, but his district is new. It's a weird, I should have put a picture up there. It's really kind of like a horseshoe, takes in a lot of western Riverside County, a little bit of Orange County, Corona, and then it kind of spans out through San Jacinto into the desert and takes in Palm Springs, which is a pretty liberal city. And so he's not used to campaigning out in the desert. That's a new constituency for him. He's always been a Western Riverside County person. So I'm going to be interested to watch that. Right now, as turnout stands, he has about 40,000 votes. The Democrats combined have about 41,000. So right now, the Democrats have about a 1,500 vote lead on the Republican turnout. So it's about 2%. So I really think that's going to be a seat to watch in Riverside County because I think we have a Republican that's been a solid Republican for us. But it's going to be a competitive race where just because of now the territory it takes in, Democrats are going to have a shot at it. But if Ken works hard, if he raises money, and he gets his grassroots supporters out to support him, I think he'll be okay.
48th District, Darrell Issa. He's got a commanding lead right now.
I always call Darrell Issa the luckiest member of Congress because he has such a Republican district. He had been predominantly, I should say, a San Diego member of Congress, and chose not to run a couple of years ago when his district got really bad in a presidential year. And then he ran in a special election for a congressional seat and won, and is now in a very conservative, very Republican seat. So he's going to be fine. He's a great representative for us out in D.C., but he'll be just fine in November.
All right, let's move to the state senators. We've got the 32nd district is the one I want to talk about because that's our local area here. Kelly Ciarto is going up against Brian Nash, and Kelly Ciarto right now is doing quite well.
Yeah, 58% of the vote to 41% of the vote for the Democrat opponent. I never saw a sign, For the Democrat, I never saw, definitely not a piece of mail, not a text message, not a phone call. So I think in that district, the standard is about 40 to 41% of the vote that he's going to get. So without doing anything, a Democrat's going to get about 40% of the vote. Kelly's worked hard. Kelly's out at a lot of events. You see him around the community. So I think he's going to be fine in November. But it's just shocking to me that without doing anything, without lifting a finger, you're going to get 41% of the vote.
Some of you had an opportunity to vote on the 36th district. Ian Weeks, his brother goes to church at 412 Church, Temecula Valley.
Matthew,
and
yeah.
I actually, Matthew. So I met Ian at in Sacramento, and he was up there standing against AB 2223, that whole bill that wants to kill children after they're born. I mean, just wicked stuff. So he was up there, and there was very few people that were running for office that were up there. Anthony Tremino was there, but there just weren't enough people that were running for office. So I thought it was important to know that he was up there. He was taking a stand against this. He wanted people's votes. And so far, we're looking at it's going to look like it's going to be him against Eduardo Garcia come November.
The incumbent is Eduardo Garcia, and I think Ian's a phenomenal candidate. He works hard. He's a green candidate. I mean, it's his first time running, so he doesn't know what to do. I know Ian. I know a lot of his team, and he's always asking, what do I do? What can I do better? So I think he's going to be a strong candidate, and I think he's really overperformed in that district. I think Eduardo Garcia has underperformed. Mind you, only 23,000 ballots have been turned in out of about 140,000, so it is low turnout, but I'm excited to see what Ian does. If he keeps working hard, I think he could really come close to beating Eduardo Garcia.
All right, let's talk about judges. Judges, to me, this is an important part of this race, is knowing the judges. Most people never know who the judges are. We were fortunate here in Riverside County to have 4 incredible people to get behind. And I'm excited to see how well they're doing. 3 of them are doing really well. One of them's scratching through right now. So Office 4, Natalie Lowe was the one that I endorsed on that, and Natalie Lowe is at 48% right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still a lot of ballots to be counted. And like we talked about earlier, Republican ballots are the ballots nowadays that are coming in later. So the goal here in some of these county seats is to get above 50%. If you get above 50%, you are done and you don't have to go on to November. And so she's at 48%. There isn't anybody over 50% because there were 2 other candidates in that race. So she's definitely on to November. The question is, do enough ballots come in between now and the next couple of weeks to push her over 50%? And all of these races, before we go any further, are trending the right way. So we see our endorsed candidates, the conservative candidates, gaining votes in every update. So we'll see if she can get over that 50% margin.
Office 11, Jay Keel was the one that I endorsed on that. He's doing well as far as the numbers, but it's close. I mean, it's 50.07 against 49.93.
This is funny because I went to bed last night, and I guess I should say I closed my eyes, took a shower, and then got up for work again today. So I wasn't really asleep. But when I did go to bed last night, he was down. He was under 50%, and Laura Garcia, there's only 2 people in this race. Laura Garcia is his opponent, was over 50%. And I went to bed a little discouraged, hoping that Republican ballots would come in. But we've seen that shift today to put him over 50%. So hopefully, if you want to call it a trend, but hopefully that direction can continue.
Right. That was the one out of the 4. That was the one that I've been concerned with. Office number 26, that was Jason Stone going against Eric Isaac. Jason Stone is doing quite well with that 62% of the vote.
Yeah, Jason's in. That's definitely not going to change, and he's doing just fine.
Office 28. So Christy Kirk was my pick on that. She's at 54%.
Yeah, she's going to be fine. I don't see that moving in the wrong direction. I think that's only going to get better. There were 2 candidates in that race other than Christy, so there's 3 total. And I think that she ran a very strong campaign. Her and Natalie both were everywhere, and I think that's why you're seeing such strong numbers for her. So I'm happy for her.
All right, there's one supervisor spot, the fifth supervisor. That one right there is the one that we're looking at going, okay, this could be trouble for us.
Yeah.
There's Gutierrez, Hewitt, Lloyd, White. That's really tight right now.
Yeah, that is a tight race. So right now, the two top vote getters are the mayor of Moreno Valley, Mayor Gutierrez, and then the incumbent Jeff Hewitt. Currently, by less than 100 votes, the mayor of Moreno Valley, who is a Democrat, is leading. Jeff Hewitt, who's the incumbent, who's also a Libertarian, so he's not a Republican, is in the second position. But there was an effort to put forward a Republican, Lloyd White, the mayor of Beaumont, thank you. The mayor of Beaumont, he had run for the state senate previously, and they wanted to hopefully put him in the second top vote getter position, so there'd be a Republican and a Democrat. Right now, it looks like that he's not going to be successful, and it'll be a Democrat versus our Libertarian incumbent, Jeff Hewitt.
Auditor Controller, Ben Benoit is the local guy here, and nobody's got 50% on this. So
that's a tough one. You know, I did not see anything from the incumbent, the Democrat. I thought Ben ran a very good campaign and was out there. I'm a little surprised that Ben is not over the 50% margin. You know, he has great name ID out in the desert. His father was a legislator and state legislator and a county supervisor, and then he's also the mayor of Wildemar. And he's at about 41%. The incumbent's at 42%. So we'll be interested to see. I'll be interested to see how that comes into play in November, because that's going to be a race. Ben was able to raise some money to make himself a formidable candidate or opponent, but just wasn't enough. So he's at about 42%, and the incumbent's at about just under 43%. So we'll see what happens there.
In November.
Yeah.
Right. District Attorney, I'm happy to know what happened with this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's at 53%, Mike Hestron. So done, right? That's a good thing.
That is done.
Yeah.
Mike Hestron's a great attorney general. A district attorney. We need more district attorneys around the state of California like him. He was blessed by a field of candidates that helped him. There were two candidates that were Democrats in that race, and so they really split up that Democrat vote, allowing him to surpass that 50% margin. But and what we're seeing over time, I keep coming back to the Republican ballots coming in. He was at a low 52, just above 51.9, I think it was, when I went to bed last night, and we're seeing an increase. So I think we'll see that margin widen a little bit.
Sheriff, coroner, we are again victorious. Yes. Chad Bianco is in. It's done. 58%. We're happy about that. Absolutely. For sure. So we have a good solid sheriff, a good solid DA. It was kind of interesting. I don't know if you know, but Chad almost was going to run unopposed. Somebody at the last minute threw their hat in the ring and didn't raise hardly anything, didn't have any good ground game at all. And it just amazes me. You know, you look at that 41%, like you didn't even do anything.
Again, it's that 41% number. I feel like if you do nothing and you're a Democrat, you're going to get 41% of the vote in a lot of these seats in the county of Riverside. You're right, he did not do anything. I saw a couple text messages, or I heard about them, but the Democrats kind of really propped him up to support him because they don't like Chad, because Chad's a law and order guy, and Democrats don't want law and order, so they really tried to prop him up, but they knew that they were going to be unsuccessful. So I'm happy to see Sheriff Bianco get 58% of the vote, and that's about 1.5 points higher than it was last night. So we'll see over the next couple of days, that could definitely increase.
Yeah, you look at what's going on in our state right now. There is a massive amount of people that are waking up to what's going on. We saw in San Francisco, there was a district attorney recall election, a special election, and they were successful in that.
They were. We've seen that over a couple of times. I mean, starting in Virginia, and now we've seen a couple recalls of school board members, and now a district attorney. So hopefully we keep that trend. And while turnout's really low in Riverside County, I do think that what we're seeing across the state are engaged voters voting, and voters that are educated on the issues, and that's why we're seeing recalls, because they're paying attention to what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, this recall election for the district attorney in San Francisco,
Right.
And it was Democrats that actually helped make this happen.
Yep.
Because I think they're realizing that they have overplayed their hand, and this whole defund the police movement, and let's get these Soros-funded DAs in there. It's not working out.
Well, I think that speaks to a larger issue. I think the Democratic Party is out of touch with their voters. I think we had lunch with somebody the other day that was talking about their parent being a Kennedy Democrat, and I think the Kennedy Democrats are like, wait, what's going on? Even if you're a progressive, the Democratic Party is out of touch with you. They've gone so far to the left, and I think you're seeing that with candidates, right? So they are out there recruiting candidates that are far to the left that don't fit their district. And so that's something that is an advantage for Republicans that are running, Ken Calvert. Their opponents are out of touch with their district, and it's our job to make sure that our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues know just how out of touch they are.
Yeah. That's all the ones we're going to go through tonight. We've got school boards coming up now. Now it's like for us, this is go time.
Absolutely.
Because the primaries are over. The school board races are going to be a massive focus in California. They're a massive focus for the California Teachers Association.
Absolutely. Well, you were just telling me earlier that the California Teachers Association had a whole meeting about you and what you're doing in Southern California, and it really comes back to be engaged in your local races, right? I mean, your sheriff matters, your district attorney matters, your county supervisor matters, but then even below that, your city council and your school board matters. And so I'm really privileged to work with Pastor Tim on recruiting and training and supporting good conservative school board members or candidates that are going to soon become members. And so find out who your school board member is, find out who your candidate is in your district, and get involved with them.
And always remember this, there are 3 issues that we're going to try to get these people elected for. The 3 issues are very simple. We don't want adult people talking to little 5-year-olds about sexual matters. Those are conversations that should be had at home. It's not something we want these grown men in classrooms talking to 5-year-olds about their sexual desires. Just stop. Let them be kids. That's the first issue. Second issue is don't put our kids in a classification of oppressed and oppressors based on color of skin. That we all know this well enough. We're supposed to judge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So we don't want that type of stuff happening on our public school campuses. The third thing is very, very simple. The parent is the ultimate authority in the child's life, period. No matter where that child is, if they happen to be at a public school, wherever they are, that parent is the ultimate authority in that child's life.
I think it's just so interesting because we're advocating for parental rights. All of those issues that you just indicated fall under this umbrella of we want parents to have a greater role in their kids' education, while the left looks at parents as a barrier to their kids' education. And it's our job. And I think parents are waking up to that, so to speak. And I think COVID allowed that to happen, right? Parents were in the other room when their kids were learning, and they would hear what teachers are saying, and they'd pop their head around the corner and say, hey, what happened there? And that happened because kids are at home, parents are in the other room, and they're hearing what they're being taught in their Zoom classroom, and now they're engaged. And we got to make sure that they continue to stay engaged. Now, just because kids are back in the classroom, thank God, doesn't mean that it's a time to take your foot off the pedal or to disengage from that process.
Right. So looking forward to that. We're going to have massive victories in November. I already know that. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We got a really cool guest next week. I want to show you a quick video of who we've got next week on Wednesday Night Live.
Coming up on Wednesday Night Live.
Out there, they haven't found their purpose. They haven't answered their call. A lot of people aren't believers at all, so they're never going to hear their call. And there's our Christians out there who are too afraid to answer the call. They're getting the call, but they don't want to take that step. Take me. I was saved by grace, and my purpose was to testify to the wayward.
I decided to reopen my gym against the California lockdowns. And on May 10th, I was arrested. I was taken away in handcuffs, and I got released. They were releasing pedophiles anyway, so they just cut me go. And we battled and battled and battled. I had a great lawyer, Mel at Uplift Law. I think what we did helped a lot of other people feel they could do it too. Gyms were the first big rush or big push of businesses that kind of stood up in San Diego County.
I remember it was gyms and church. There was a church in our valley, and there was churches across California that stood up against this. Louis Uredell, that's who that was. He's going to be a lot of fun to talk to. We're going to talk about the attack on masculinity. I think that Wednesday night before Father's Day is going to be a fun day to talk about that. There's an attack on masculinity. They want men with low testosterone. We call them Democrats. They want men with low testosterone. If you didn't hear that study, it's a legitimate study. Democrat men have low testosterone. They want it that way. And here's the thing. When a man isn't acting like a man, you end up with the culture we have right now. Enough's enough. The men need to stand up. They need to man up. And I'm sick and tired of having people try to make us feel bad about that. I don't feel bad about it at all. I'm all man 100%. My wife loves it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that next week. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you guys will join us. Matthew, so much.
Thank you.
So much good stuff,
Yes,
man. I'm
absolutely.
really excited for what we're going to be doing. God bless you guys. If you have questions, can they come and talk to you?
Yeah,
You're gonna be
absolutely.
hanging out?
I'll stick
okay,
around
if
if you
you
have
got
any
questions for
questions.
Matthew, see him. Other than that, we'll see you guys right here next week on Wednesday Night Live.
Well, hey, I really do hope that our guest today and our time together was a blessing to you. I want to ask, if it was, would you please share this video out with your friends on social media? Also, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to us so that way you can be updated every time we have a new episode of Our Watch. Again, blessing to have you with us, and we hope that you have a blessed time being effective for the kingdom in the culture that we live in.